Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Cabinet meeting of the 13th of, of course, it's the 12th of October. As always, looking at the wrong part of my paperwork, but that's how it goes. I've got apologies, not quite apologies. We've got Councillors Costigan from the Cabinet joining us online, as is Councillor Malcolm, who's asking a question. Councillor Blacker has apologies for lateness, and he'll be joining us shortly. The Chief Whip, Garshaw, is not joining the meeting. There are no urgent matters. There are no matters to be considered in private. Are there any declarations of interest? I see none. So we move to the minutes of the previous meeting of the 13th of September. Unless there are any corrections or clarifications, I don't see any. So I ask that they are agreed. No appointments to subcommittees and to outside bodies. So we go first to Councillor Donnelly for the agency worker contract.
Thank you, Chair. As Cabinet will have seen, the paper seeks approval to make a one-year extension to the contract that we have had with Adecco since 2022. That one-year extension possibility was built into the contract when it was already agreed, one of two possible one-year extensions. I don't think, if it's in the context of the report, I don't think we'll be moving forward in the same way in 12 months further on. And with the senior leadership team, we're looking to put together different delivery models to ensure the best build for our workforce and to get the most efficient use of our money in terms of employment. So, but in order to have the time to put those ideas together, we need to extend the contract for a further year.
Thank you very much, Councillor Donnelly. I didn't have any requests to speak on this, and unless Cabinet members want to speak, then I direct you all to the recommendations in the report and ask that they're agreed. Thank you very much. And we move next to the Council Plan Performance Report Q1 for 2023-2024. As Cabinet members, and I'm sure the wonderful people of Ealing are well familiar with now, the quarterly performance report is incredibly important to us as an organisation, partly because it does two things. The first is it makes sure that we are keeping progress against the council plan and the delivery tracker that we have usually each quarter to ensure that we're meeting the commitments that we set out to the people of Ealing and the ones that they asked us to get on with. What it also does is it contains a series of key performance indicators that give us an indication and help us track how fit the organisation is to practice, insofar as that we have a licence to operate and doing all the things that we know that we need to do. So as you will have spotted, this particular quarter, we don't have the first section of the report, not least because we've only just adopted the council plan. And whilst those projects are well underway, and I'm sure Cabinet members may well wish to give us some teasers as to what that might look like when we go round. It's not in this report for this quarter, but of course we'll return to the quarterly performance report in 3 months' time. So much of the discussion, I'm sure, will focus on the key performance indicators that are contained within. So what I'm going to do, as I always do, is just sort of go around each Cabinet member and ask that you give us a bit of a précis as to where we are. And I believe we start with tackling crime and inequality. So Councillor Anand.
Chair, thank you very much. Chair, we've done some very impressive work. If you look at the performance indicators on police recorded offences, youth justice system, and the care leavers where are accessing our employment services, and also the percentage of care leavers who've been at the ages of 17 to 18. So we've done really well. It's a very impressive service. There's lots of strengths, and it also delivers on strategically, operationally across all the domains. So the Youth Justice Service recognizes, the importance of hearing from our children and our families who access the service to actually understand their needs and their plans that are put in place for them to be followed. So it's a very proactive approach and strong partnership working. It's very important for us to work in key partnership to give our children the access to a wide range of services that promote community sort of integration and to build on our strengths. But on page 44, one of the performance indicators is in red, and that is the percentage of young offenders engaged in suitable education, training, or employment. Chair, there's a very small cohort of youngsters who have got very complex needs, and there's some strategic plans that needs to be put into place to support the young offenders. And there are sometimes really significant needs around their sort of the problems that they have. There's they can have some kind of family problems. They might have young children where the partners need the support, the children need the support, and so does the young offender. So there could be really very difficult areas that the team would need to work on, and that really needs individual plans to address the real complex issues relating to each of those cases. And I think the team are working very closely with our partners to make sure that we actually deliver on these individual plans and support the young people so that they can get the training and opportunities and learnings and employment through our service.
Yeah, thank you very much. And of course, it is the case. If it's a small cohort of young people, then of course one change will of course change quite a substantial bit of that figure. So I think that's that of course is worth bearing in mind. I think we're going next to climate action. Councillor Costigan.
Thanks, Chair, and it's great to see so much green in tonight's report in relation to the climate action performance indicators. I think particularly, to pick out some of the indicators that we're performing really well against relate to the levels of cleanliness in our streets, which I know is something that's really important to local residents. So it's great to see that the percentage of streets free of litter, free of detritus, and free of graffiti and fly posting are all green. We're on or above target for all of these. And also fly tips cleared within the target time is also at 97%, which is great. I'd add to that, of course, that we are one of the top boroughs in the country when it comes to fining people who fly tip. So it's not just about picking up the fly tips, it's making sure that people know that this is something they can't do and that they will be punished by Ealing Council if they insist on dropping their rubbish on our streets. I think the only area that we're are focusing a little bit more on at the moment is in relation to our recycling percentage in the borough. We know that throughout the whole country during COVID, there was a reduction in recycling. So I think as a nation, we're still having to kind of come back from that since COVID. However, actually at Ealing Council is doing really well. We are in the top 3 London boroughs when it comes to the percentage of waste that our residents recycle and that we're able to make sure don't go to landfill and are recycled. However, there is still work to do, and we've got a high target for Ealing. We want to be consistently in that top 3 and as high as possible in the top 3. So we're continuing to work on that. One of the issues is contamination, where residents sometimes put rubbish in the recycling that can't be recycled. So we're doing a lot of education around that, including knocking on doors so that people understand what needs to go in each bin. And we're also continuing to roll out recycling for flats above shops, which is one of the hardest areas to ensure that recycling is not contaminated. So we're doing a lot of work on that, and I'm hopeful that we will do even better in the future in this area. I think in terms of what's coming forward and the delivery plan objectives that we will see in the next quarter, I'm excited that I'll be bringing you some news on bike hangers, which I think is going to show that we will have doubled the number of bike hangers already this year. And I think that's really exciting news for our residents who want to get on their bike and reduce their climate impact and improve the air quality of the borough, of which more later in this meeting. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We know that Councillor Blacker is joining us shortly, so we're going to give him a bit of time to come back from the school run. So we'll skip to a fairer start. So Councillor Nagpal.
Thanks, Chair. All of the Fairer Start KPIs are green, so very positive. I'll go through some of them quickly. So percentage of children looked after with more than 3 placements within a year. There are no children with more than 3 placements in Q1, which is the best outcome for our children in care. I mean, sometimes it is necessary to have placement moves for that child, for a child, to give them the best outcome, but in Q1 there have been none of those. Percentage of re-referrals in the last 12 months. This is 15.1% against a Q1 target of 18.5%. Again, very positive. A low re-referral rate shows that the work that we're doing to make sure that Ealing's children are safe, that work is right for those children, the outcome. And because we're not seeing them re-referred again, referred to us again, it shows that the work we're doing is right to keep them safe. And if they are, and we are seeing them again, it's very low numbers. Percentage of 16 to 17-year-olds not in education, employment or training. Again, very low at 1.1% against a Q1 target of 1.4%. This is an area where we are excellent, not just with our looked after children, but we see the same with our care leavers. Unfortunately, those young people who are part of this statistics have complex needs, and some of them are unaccompanied minors and therefore are unable to educate, are entitled to education or employment or training. But on the whole, really positive.
Thank you very much. Councillor Backer has arrived, but I'll let him settle just before we come back to him. So let's go to decent living incomes. Councillor Brett.
Thank you, Chair. So Q1, obviously, I don't have as many as everybody else, but so the number of people completing employability and professional courses, we are green and we're going above our targets for this quarter. And we're hoping to continue that trend, which is brilliant news for our residents, in particular, the residents that have got the greatest barriers to employment. So that's good news for us. And then just in terms of our RED, which is the average days taken to processing benefit claims, it has gone up by 2 days, which isn't like a huge amount. Obviously, we would prefer it to be where it's at and on target. But the officers are aware of it, and we're keeping a close eye on it that it doesn't go up and actually goes down. So that's my update for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to inclusive economy. Councillor Manray. Oh no, Councillor Donnelly, of course.
He's changed. Thank you, Chair. I'll just pick out, I think, three areas for different reasons. In terms of the sick absence, employee sick absence statistics, the first time in a long time we've seen improvement. And I want to give credit to the really refocused effort in terms of return to work interviews and engagement with employees that we've been pushing right through the organisation. I'm too long in the tooth to take 1 quarter statistics as being proof that all is now well and the problems of COVID and its aftermath are behind us, but it is a very positive short-term statistic. The other 2 I want to pick out, they're both currently red, but kind of they show the different aspects of red. First one is in terms of the percentage of telephone calls answered in 5 minutes. We're still behind where we've set ourselves on that. And I realise that's something I report to Cabinet always with a different reason, pretty much every quarter, which has caused, so I'm working with officers to really investigate the resilience around the service, because it's not that in principle we don't have the people and the technology available to meet the targets that we've set, but perhaps we are not quite resilient enough to deal with what seem to be the inevitable bumps in the road. So we're going to look at the whole issue of targeting and resourcing there. And the other one, which again currently marked as red, which seems rather unfair, which is how we deal with freedom of information requests, where there's been a really tremendous job of work done in pushing up the percentage responded to within the statutory 20 days. The target, unfortunately, can't be any lower than 100%. Otherwise, it would look as though we weren't taking our responsibilities seriously, what kind of means that anything below 100% comes in as red, which I think is very unfair on not just the team that manage our freedom of information requests, who've been doing a very, very good job, but also around the organisation where there's been a renewed focus on meeting our responsibilities. And I want to say thank you to everybody for engaging in that.
Thank you very much. Now I will come to you, Councillor Manro, for safe and genuinely affordable homes. I think it's probably because I've just come back from Labour Party conference and I've had very little sleep probably over the last few days, if I'm entirely honest, because I really am getting myself confused, aren't I? Safe and genuine affordable homes is Councillor Mahfouz.
Thank you. What a great segue, because you talk about sleepless nights, and sadly, out there right now there are too many people having sleepless nights, worrying about having a roof over their head, because at the moment not only do we have a cost of living crisis, but we also have an absolute housing crisis where the housing market is entirely broken. And so when I talk about the statistics and where we are with our performance indicators, well, I'm talking about families and individuals who have been impacted because of a government that's let them down, and that we are picking up the pieces to try and support them in the best way that we can. And whilst I am happy to be able to say that we have got all three of those targets in the green, which is absolutely phenomenal, it is an astounding fact given the status of the housing market across London and the country at the moment. So those three KPIs are, first of all, in terms of preventing people from becoming homeless in the first place with early intervention, and that we are above target on that with 57%. And then, of course, inevitably, we are having to put up people and families in bed and breakfast. And so we are trying to keep those numbers as low as possible and the length of that time as low as possible. And on both of those indicators, again, we're in the green. But again, that is going to be even more challenging as the year goes through, and we are facing more and more families turning up on our doorstep because the landlords of their properties have decided to up sticks and move out because of the high interest rates, because of the exorbitant costs, which they're either trying to pass on to their tenants or saying, look, we're just getting out this game in its entirety. So at the moment, it's in a good position. We'll see how that goes for the rest of the year, but that's where we are with safe and genuinely affordable homes at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Mahfouz. And I think, to emphasise the point that, of course, the challenges that we're facing here in Ealing around both bed and breakfast accommodation and temporary accommodation more broadly, is a similar pattern that's affecting not just London, but actually increasingly the rest of the country. And that is a very different picture and a very different pattern to the one that we're used to. A few years ago, we all but ended the use of bed and breakfast type accommodation in the borough. And of course, we now see that being significantly difficult. So I do want to commend Councillor Mahfouz and the team for the work that you've done to try and contain the situation that we're in. But I think we should expect that picture probably to become worse before we can expect it to be better. Third time lucky, Councillor Manro. I'm pretty sure that you are indeed the Cabinet Member for Good Growth and New Housing. So let's hear the performance report.
Thank you, Chair. So I have some good news to talk about. Ealing is the best planning authority in London, with a near perfect record across major applications of 100% against a target of 96%. The minors are at 99.5% against a target of 93%, and other applications 98.6% against a target of 94%. So our planning application determinations are made within these target timescales, and I can only thank all the officers and the planners for actually delivering us a near perfect record in terms of major, and we are the best planning authority in London, and we intend to stay there. But what I would say, Chair, is there are some other issues where at the Conservative conference in Manchester, where what we were listening to at the gates of some of our meetings in Uxbridge, etc., with Piers Corbyn talking about us imprisoning people in 15-minute cities and not letting them out, actually reached the conference table in terms of government ministers repeating those absolute right-wing allegations around local authorities wanting to imprison people in their local areas, not letting them go shopping for more than a certain number of times. It's absolutely amazing how right-wing propaganda has now crossed over where government ministers are mouthing those from the conference speeches that they created and uttered. So I really don't understand what is going on, but it is an absolute travesty to see how this government is just falling to bits and repeating things which right-wing rabid commentators were doing on the internet only 6, 7, 8 months, a year ago or so. So it is really amazing how that spread, but we're not intending to imprison people in our 20-minute cities. We're intending to create facilities, etc., so people are able to access shops, restaurants, leisure facilities in a reasonable walking pace. So they may not need to use a car, but if they need to use a car, they can and go wherever they want. There is no red line and there's no border points between the 20-minute cities, which is absolutely crazy. But that's what they were claiming from the conference table, government ministers. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is through the looking glass that we should sort of be in this post-truth world where what ultimately is a very dull planning theory that says that people should literally just be able to walk to the shops to get what they need is sort of somehow translated into some grand conspiracy. And unfortunately, Councillor Manro, I'm sure that this clip will be, or this part of the meeting is no doubt going to get clipped and spread on some internet conspiracy theory website, as you know, as of course there must be some secret plan if we're denying it that it's actually going to happen. But you've denounced it, I've denounced it. Let's see what happens. Councillor Newstub, are you the cabinet member for Thriving Communities?
For today I am. So thank you, Chair. I'm delighted that all the KPIs in Thriving Communities area are green, and that we're really bucking that post-COVID trend with numbers of people visiting our libraries, both in person and virtually, up, as are visits to the leisure centres. So we are keeping minds and bodies fit and healthy. I look forward to future meetings where we'll be able to report on progress on building a world-class leisure facility at the site of Gurnell, becoming a borough sanctuary, delivering our reimagined town forums, as well as improving our sporting and cultural offerings for all of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Blacker for Healthy Lives.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies again for lateness. So I think this is one of the first times I've actually had some red and ambers in this kind of report. And I think that's probably a sign that we're actually taking a more rigorous approach this year and setting ourselves a bit kind of stretchier targets and kind of measures that we're not just picking measures that we're going to do well on. But doing well, we are facing increased demand in adult social care. And I think HASP, Health Scrutiny in September, looked at some of the increasing numbers of referrals arising from our contacts. But I think looking at the indicators suggests that actually our Better Lives approach is having an impact on keeping people out of care homes. It is keeping people in their own homes more independent, leading happier, healthier, longer lives independently by themselves. Many of them, of course, are not necessarily within our control, but we do have great influence. So I'm very pleased to see that the work that we have done with the care market in Ealing retains that green status for our percentage of CQC regulated agencies rated good or outstanding, despite the fact that we have had new agencies enter the market, which brings our total percentage down until they are rated. On the others, we are seeing a higher average waiting time for contacts. I think that's probably a reflection of the fact that we have only so much resource. We are trying to get through the reviews as best we can and make sure people are on the most appropriate packages for where they are in their care, and the fact that we have that increased demand and that we are doing our best to get through that kind of demand as we can. In terms of the working age population, admissions and permanent residential care, nursing care, it is early days in the year, so we will monitor that. It's not kind of at this point too much of a worry, but we will monitor it and do our best to keep that down as we have done on the over 65s.
Thank you very much. What we'll do now is move to questions from members who've indicated. Councillor Gallant, as you're in the room, you can go first.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have just 3 questions on the performance reports. On the percentage of phone calls answered within 5 minutes, the target is 80%, performance 76%. So technical issues cited being addressed, technical issues with third-party suppliers. A little more elaboration on that would be very good if that's possible, particularly about third-party suppliers. On the household waste sent for reuse, recycling and composting, portfolio has mentioned there's been door knocking, which I presume is a form of focused communication activity. I'd like lessons in copywriting, please, because I think that's a marvelous phrase. Will that progress to any form of enforcement rather than just door knocking? So that's the question there. And on dissatisfaction with contacts, so targets 80%, achievement is 75%. Is this because people can't find anyone to talk to, and that's the most common complaint I hear, or is it because they genuinely feel that they've been ill-served by the council?
So Councillor Donnelly, do you want to take 1 and 3 together, and then we'll bring in Councillor Costigan for the question 2.
I wasn't sure I fully understood the third point. Perhaps the Councillor Gallant could.
Well, I mean, it was sort of, it was more of a subjective than an objective question of belief. But I mean, do you want him to repeat it, or
Okay,
do you?
well, just to take it in the round in terms of third-party software. My memory relates to the software that we used around the call handling, because obviously these days it's all voice over IP. It's not done through the old-fashioned telephone line. So, but if it's not that, I'll ensure that an explanation. If there's a more complex explanation, I'll ensure it's passed to you. Ensure that in terms of the relationship between satisfaction and calls. I mean, I think what this one shows is a huge percentage of the interaction with us now is not done via the telephone. And that is partly because it helps us because we can serve more people more quickly. But it also helps people because in the course of their lives now, they can interact with us at any time. They can interact with us outside of normal working hours. They can make their reports of issues. They can apply for planning application. They can do things at any time. And also, we for a quarter of a century, we've been driven down that path by consecutive governments to move us into a situation where more of our work is done online. So I think on balance, the figure of 75% people being satisfied, I tend to feel that's quite a good position, but it's not one about which we should be complacent. So if that philosophical answer to your philosophical question, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Costigan.
Thanks, Councillor Gallant. We're focusing our efforts around increasing recycling in the borough really on persuasion and education, hence why we're knocking on people's doors and explaining to them what goes in each of their bins. And we're also very aware that for some people living in flats, there isn't always the space for the containers that they need to make sure that they've got separate recycling and residual waste collections. So we work directly with managing agents in order to find that space and to put in place the right receptacles for their recycling and for their rubbish. So there's quite a lot of hard work that goes into that. A lot of the issue relates to food waste, where we find about 30% of the black bins have food waste. There's food waste in there, and we need to try and educate residents in order to get that food waste out. Now, like I say, we're focusing on education. We think that's the best way to bring people with us, but it's really not helped by made-up stories from the Conservative Party and Rishi Sunak about phantom 7 bins being required. Actually, the only people who've ever talked about having 7 bins was the Conservative Party themselves, but they seem to be now running away from their own policies. In fact, they're running away from anything that might have any impact on increasing recycling in the country and in London. And they have rolled back and refused to bring forward a series of policies around, for example, deposit retention schemes for bottles, and also the polluter pays set of policies that they had promised to bring forward. And the polluter should be paying. We should be ensuring that packaging is at a minimum, and where there is packaging, that the manufacturers are paying for the recycling of that packaging. But unfortunately, the Conservative government has absolutely no spine, no backbone on any of this, and they are refusing to bring those policies forward, and instead making up phantom stories about bins in order to try and undo all of the great education and persuasion work that local councils like Ealing are doing to reduce our carbon footprint and to increase recycling.
Thank you very much. I believe there is a question from Councillor Malcolm.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Yes, save the ones that have already been asked by Councillor Gallant and answered by the portfolio holders. The question I have relates to Councillor Donnelly and the FOI requests. Although I agree the target of 100% is where we should be aiming for, I still believe that we're quite low there. On that, what's your prediction for where we'll be in 3 months' time? Because we've had an improvement, but it's not really dramatic. And secondly, on that point, in terms of the motion that was raised at full council a number of months ago now, in terms of making FY requests more publicly available on the council website, when will that be sort of actioned, Councillor Donnelly?
So, Councillor, can you peer into your crystal ball for us and predict what our rate of freedom of information requests will be over the next few months?
Well, if I take my spectacles off, it may look more dramatic. Before I seek to make a prediction, I think I want to disagree strongly with the notion that we haven't seen significant improvement. We have. We're no longer seeing significant improvement quarter by quarter because the greatest amount of the improvement has already been achieved over the course of the last year. But I'm in no doubt one of the things I found very unsatisfactory when I took over the portfolio was the performance in this area. And on the whole, that performance reflected, shall we say, issues and challenges with performance more generally in certain parts of the organization. Organizations tend not to be brilliant at one thing and really terrible at another. You'll see reflection. So I think we've done a great job of work across the organization to get to 88.6%. I think moving to my prediction, I think that last 11.4% will be the hardest to land. I think in any given quarter, if we given the increased volume of FOI requests compared with a few years ago, I think it will be enormously difficult in any given quarter to land at 100%. But I do hope and expect to see us in the next year move into the 90s and to stay there, which is certainly where we should be. It's worth bearing in mind that some things that come in as FOI requests are little more than marketing organizations seeking to harvest data from us. And I think it's right that such requests receive less urgent attention than genuine freedom of information requests from our residents and proper organizations. But we have a duty to respond to all of them, and we will do so.
Yeah, indeed. And I can certainly think of some freedom of information requests that we've received very recently that are actually from commercial organisations that are seeking to circumnavigate proper due process, both in procurement and in contract law, to reveal information that would otherwise be commercially sensitive. And of course, that is a very unethical way of trying to access the council's data. And of course, we should rightly approach those types of requests accordingly. The freedom of information requests and the freedom of information legislation are there for a very specific purpose, and it's incredibly important for the openness and the transparency of the organisation. But for those for-profit organisations that seek to, shall we say, abuse that process, of course, is deeply unfortunate. But Councillor Donnelly, thank you for the explanation. I think on the basis of that, unless there are any other contributions or comments that Cabinet members have, what I'll do is ask, therefore, that you note the performance and ask that you agree the paper. Agree. Thank you very much. So we now move to, let me get the precise wording correct, the Ealing Air Quality Strategy and the Action Plan. Councillor Costigan.
Thanks, Chair. And I'm really delighted to bring forward our Air Quality Action Plan and Air Quality Strategy this evening, because it has been work that we have been carrying out over the last 12 months, really. It's been quite an in-depth process of consultation with residents, and then reconsultation. We've gone out to people again to check, is this what you want to see? Are you happy with our proposals? We know air quality is a big concern of residents across London, and it's a concern of Ealing residents too. So we made clear that we were going to ensure that we had a robust plan to tackle air quality in all of the different aspects, because it is quite a complicated issue. There's no simple answer. There's a series of responses that we need to make. This paper tonight includes two different documents. One is the Air Quality Strategy and the other is the Air Quality Action Plan. And for clarity, the Air Quality Action Plan is a statutory document that we need to provide because we have declared 8 areas in the borough air quality management areas. And as a result, you need to have an Air Quality Action Plan which outlines specifically the work you will do to improve air quality in those areas. But that's not enough for us. Ealing Council wants to go further than that. We want to ensure that we're looking at air quality across the entire borough and that we have coherent and comprehensive policies that will improve air quality for all of our residents. And we've therefore produced an air quality strategy in addition to the Air Quality Action Plan. And part of the point of the air quality strategy is not only to say how we're going to improve air in Ealing, it's also to try and bring residents with us to increase understanding of air quality issues. We don't see the air, we can't see the tiny particles that are attacking our organs, and we can't see the nitrogen dioxide in the air. So what we want to do is educate our residents so they understand how vital it is that we bring this work forward. The areas that we're focusing on in the air quality strategy are reducing emissions from road traffic, because road traffic remains the single biggest contributor to dirty air in London and in Ealing. And some of the work here includes school streets. We've now got 24 school streets, with Ravener launching its school street last week. Also the work we're doing on idling, myself and the leader, were there when we erected new anti-idling signs in the borough just recently, and we've now ramped up the fines for idling to the maximum. The other area we're looking at is indoor air quality, which has often been ignored. We have a plan to retrofit 750 homes in the borough and wean them off traditional boilers. And we need a lot more support from government for that, a lot more support. And we also need support to be able to reduce the impact of wood burners where councils don't have strong enough enforcement powers. Construction and building of new developments, they also have an impact on air quality. Again, we do need more powers to enforce there, but we have outlined what we can do in this strategy, and we're continuing to campaign to get the powers that we need. I recently gave evidence to the Parliamentary Select Committee on Environmental Audit, where I made clear that we need these additional powers. Two final areas are increasing the green infrastructure in the borough, and this includes our plan for 50,000 new trees and for a new regional park. And finally, as I said at the outset, this is also about raising awareness with residents, so they understand the significant impact air quality has on all of our health, and so that each one of us can take action in our lives in order to improve air quality in the borough. We're also hoping that we'll have, as part of this work, a website where residents can go in and have a look at the air quality in their area and look at the data that comes from the council's own air quality monitoring systems that are dotted around the borough. So I would ask Cabinet to agree this really important piece of work tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Costa. Is that working? Yeah, it is. Is that working? You can hear it. Fine. There is a question. Normally, I try and keep it very, very disciplined to make sure that we just ask questions. But of course, Councillor Gallant, you know, I know that you have previously supported the administration in our rollout of 20 miles per hour zones, and of course our attempt to win government the powers to enforce it. So you know, I will certainly invite you to reiterate your support for those two policies now, as well as to ask your question.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to focus on anti-idling, which I do support the council's policy wholeheartedly, and you should be under no doubt about that. But you've spoken about it. When you introduced the policy, it did have 3 stages, and it was quite structured. And I feel it's got a bit sort of it's sort of entered into sort of one kind of soup now. So where are you? Are you in the enforcement phase? And if you are you having any success?
Councillor Costigan.
Thank you, Councillor Gallant. Yes, as you've outlined, you have always supported our work on idling, and I'm very grateful for that. I think it's great that we can have cross-party support on this work because it is so important to our residents. And we said from the beginning that we would start by putting signs up around the borough, making it clear that we were going to enforce at a much higher rate than previously. But always with enforcement, we start off by you know, putting those warnings in place, educating people that the rules have changed, and giving them some time to become aware and to understand the new rules. So that's the phase that we're in the moment, but we will be enforcing, and we will be fining people the maximum £80 in fines. I would say, and whilst I very much support welcome Councillor Gallant's support for our work on idling, I don't think that his position is necessarily reflective of his party, the Conservative Party's work or thoughts around air quality. I must say some of the recent announcements, including the so-called plan for drivers that we heard from Rishi Sunak, are really going to do the opposite. They're going to have a significantly negative impact on air quality in London and in Ealing if they are ever even implemented, because I have to say a lot of these ideas that we heard from the Conservative Party don't make any sense whatsoever. As my colleague mentioned earlier, they basically are saying that they don't agree with residents having local services in their area. They don't agree with us being able to get to doctors' surgeries, to shops, to libraries, to schools within 15 or 20 minutes. They want to slow down the buses. They want to get rid of some of our bus lanes so that we're all stuck in the back of the bus in traffic. They want to stop councils enforcing against illegal turns and yellow box junctions. So again, we'll have massive congestion on our roads and nobody will be getting anywhere. And of course, the 20-mile-per-hour pronouncements that they're making, if they even knew what they were talking about, because they didn't seem to be able to answer any questions on it, would only lead to increased deaths and injuries on our roads. In contrast to this, as Keir Starmer made clear at the Labour Party conference of the weekend, the Labour Party is full steam ahead, both on addressing the climate crisis and achieving net zero, but also in addressing the significant problems that we face in air quality. We've got a very clear plan here on how we address air quality, but we're also coupled that with our work on climate action, which is all about getting cheaper energy for our residents and making sure London, Ealing, the United Kingdom is not left behind in that fight for the green jobs of the future that will ensure the prosperity and the health of this country. Thank you, Councillor Gallant.
Thank you very much, Councillor Costigan. Now, Councillor Gallant, I did notice you did sidestep my invitation to support, as you have done before, both our 20-mile-an-hour zones as well as, of course, as our call for enforcement to it. So, you know, I'll let you speak again if indeed you do want to reiterate your previous support for those two policies. But But if you don't wish to, then that's perfectly fine.
It's very kind of you, Chair, but I'm always told how little I can say at these cabinet meetings, so I'll just I'll reserve judgment. But I just wanted to ask that question on idling, and it's been answered. It's been answered well, and you can count on my support on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Noted. Thank you very much, Councillor Costigan. Are there any other contributions or comments from Cabinet? If not, then I'll direct you to the recommendations that are in the report and ask that they're agreed. Thank you very much. So that, I believe, brings us to the conclusion of this Cabinet meeting. The date of the next meeting, which I will probably get wrong again at the start of the meeting, as I did this morning, this afternoon. I've done it again. The date of the next meeting will, of course, be Wednesday, the 8th of November. So I'll see you all then. Thank you very much.